Hey, what's up guys, aarava here, and welcome back to a brand new video here today, and welcome to another F1 2020 game ideas video. Yes, I know, we're doing plenty of these at this time of the year, but it is really the right time to be doing these kind of videos, as right now Codemasters are probably developing F1 2020, of course, if it is to be coming out at the same time, roughly, as 2019, and you guys keep on coming up with some really awesome ideas in the comments below of previous videos. So the previous one we did, you guys had a bunch more ideas that haven't been mentioned before, loads with thumbs up of over 200 likes, basically, so are clearly popular ones in the comments below. So here we go, here's another 7 things we want to see in F1 2020 career mode. Now, number 1 is going to be about contract negotiations and teams contacting you instead for contracts, and it's something that used to happen in the older F1 games. I'm thinking back to F1 2012, I think 2011 even, potentially. 2010 had something like that, where you could see the reputation of yourself with other teams, and maybe that could give you indication of what offers you are going to get at the end of the season, essentially. But teams now no longer contact you. It's all about what you want to do, which is great. You know, it's great to give the player choice, but obviously in reality, in real life, it's not exactly like that, is it? Sometimes teams do go after the drivers. Yes, other drivers might be the ones actively pursuing their options if they get dropped by their current team, or they want to leave the current team they're in, perhaps. But, you know, I think that it should be a kind of half and half situation where you start these options at the end of the season or in the middle of the season, where you can pick if you want to negotiate with another team, like with your PR agent, like it is right now in 2019, and it has been the case for the last 2 years. But I think there also should be opportunities where randomly other teams will just pop up, you know, maybe very sporadically, maybe a bit more less organized than the current contract negotiations are, and they'll say, hey, do you want to drive for us potentially at the end of this season? Maybe not straight away, but at the end of the season. We talked about previously in one of these videos about having a bit of a different negotiation system where you can sign 2-year contract deals, and those would give you other perks. So maybe it could work in something like that. So perhaps, let's say you're driving for Red Bull, and halfway through the season, randomly Ferrari might come to you, or Renault might come to you and say, you know, do you want to drive for us? You know, your results have been really great. You know, we can offer you this X amount. We want you to start at the end of next season, and you can then negotiate that deal and potentially do that. And that could play into if you're going to stay loyal to your current team and affect the R&D of your current team, or you're going to jump ship. Obviously, in the midfield, it's even more kind of important, that kind of case, is if you're really impressed with the midfield drive, you know, if you're in a McLaren like Carlos Sainz or Lando Norris right now, doing a great job being the best in the midfield, and that really impresses some of the top teams. Obviously, in previous F1 games, in the first ones, like I mentioned, you would probably get a contract offer from a team like Red Bull, Ferrari, or McLaren at the time in F1 2012 or 2011, but Mercedes now, and be like, you know, you've impressed in the midfield, come drive for us. You just don't get that now. Obviously, you can choose that team, but it's not really. There's less of a storyline that's being built there if they're not the ones contacting you. So that was quite a nice idea to bring that kind of back from the previous F1 games, but kind of do it in a better way and do it in a more modern way like we have right now with the negotiations as well and the contract perks. Number 2, and I really like this idea, I really did like this idea, is having different tracks in the game files and having the ability for the calendar to change. Just like the driver lineups now change, how about we have some calendar changes? I know, again, another maybe licensing issue, but we talked about that for driver transfers, and Cody's made it happen this year, so why not sneak it in at one point in a future F1 game of just having calendar changes? We have older track data from previous F1 games, the tracks that have been removed. I'm thinking, you know, the Malaysian Grand Prix, obviously Germany is not going to be there. So to have those tracks still in the game files and then have the ability to have those be calendar changes, obviously maybe not as crazy as the driver transfers as we see in the game, but maybe every 2-3 years we see maybe 2 or 3 tracks swap out or add to the calendar potentially. So 1 year in the career mode you have a 19 race calendar, maybe then you have a 20, 21, then it goes back down to 20, and you have some old favourites of ours returning from previous F1 games, basically. Obviously, in some cases, some of the tracks might be quite old, the data they have, so they might have to redo the tracks, so that will be quite a lot of work, but that's a really cool idea, to just have the track data, like, there in the game files, just kind of sat there dormant, and in the career mode, once you get past Season 1, there's that ability for the calendar to change, perhaps. Maybe they could even take a leaf out of Motorsport Manager. Obviously, the drivers in real life don't have a say in the calendar, but for the sake of the video game, it could be quite cool to have a little mini game in between seasons where you can maybe have a little vote on, you know, if you want a track to come back into the calendar. Potentially, you know, the game just kind of says, okay, now you're in the shoes of the team manager, not you as a driver, and you can vote on the calendar change perhaps, and then you go back into the shoes of the driver, maybe. I don't know, I'm just thinking kind of a little how it would kind of work in terms of giving you the interaction and a bit more control of what you want, because obviously you might not like a certain track, and if it comes through into the next year's calendar, you might kind of hate the idea. But obviously that also happens in real life. Drivers in real life don't like certain tracks, and they still have to obviously do their job and race at them. But I really like that idea, because I think it could definitely work, just like driver transfers, of having that randomness. It would just add that another layer of making sure that you versus your friends or content creators or whatever do not have the same game save as each other. You have a totally unique experience of the calendar and the driver transfers. Number 3 is going to be rear wing damage, and this was quite topical because, of course, the Renault had wing damage at the end of the race. Nico Hülkenberg got slapped into the rear end, and also the same for Lance Stroll. It was in practice at the Mexican Grand Prix. He was able to drive back to the pit lane, actually, and that's something we just don't have. Obviously, we've never actually had rear wing damage, really. We've had DRS failures, but we don't really have rear wing damage. I mean, you guys have seen my Survive episode. Sometimes the physics are so odd that when you get crashed into the rear end, your front wing breaks off, which is just, yeah, a bit ridiculous. But it would be kind of cool to actually have proper rear wing physics. I don't actually know the reason why we don't actually have rear wing damage. Like, it doesn't seem like a major thing that would be an issue for sponsors maybe to have their cars, because that's why we don't really have a lot of damage right now on the side pods and stuff like that, because I think it's something to do with the sponsors not being happy about having their having the cars looking too damaged. But I don't really get why we have the front wing damage but not the rear wing. It's just another wing at the back. Obviously, if it fell off, that would be quite a major thing, but, you know, it could be a case of the physics. You know, it has to be a really hefty hit for you to break the rear wing, but if it is, that will be game over for your Grand Prix race. So I think it should just be another layer that's added on, like we've mentioned before with floor damage. That should also be in there, because that's definitely also something that happens quite a fair bit. I mean, Hamilton had floor damage, again, topical, at the Mexican Grand Prix after his little contact there with Verstappen at the beginning of the Grand Prix. He had floor damage the entire race then, and so just like that, rear wing damage, I think, should be a thing, and it's kind of odd, actually, if you think about it, of why we don't have it right now. Number 4. Now, this was actually, an out there idea for me personally, but it got like over 200 likes on the previous video we did of this, of game ideas, so clearly quite a popular one, actually. But qualifying, having a side-by-side comparison lap then after quali's done, or having the ability to watch a side-by-side comparison lap of you and the pole time if you didn't get pole position, or perhaps if you did get pole, maybe you versus second place, or you versus your teammate. And that got me thinking, actually, just having more replay camera abilities in qualifying, like we have with the race, being able to watch a replay of the entire race. I think it'd be kind of cool to just have the ability to watch onboard replays of everyone's laps, maybe not in Q2 and Q1, but maybe just Q3, or if you did short qualifying, everyone's laps, and you can just cycle through the kind of ladder of the standings and click a certain driver and watch their qualifying lap. It's never a bad thing to have more replay options in games, because you either use them or you don't, but you're not taking anything away from the game by having their options in. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that don't actually watch the replay cameras from a race, apart from maybe content creators and those of you who really want to kind of look into any incidents or whatnot. But at the same time, it doesn't take away from anyone's experiences having a little button there saying replay. So the same thing could be said for quali, and the side-by-side comparison would be quite cool, actually. If they had a graphic, perhaps, like F1 do in real life when they make those videos of, you know, it's a Merc v Ferrari a lot of the time with the pole laps comparison, just to see where you're losing time, maybe to a teammate or the pole lap. It would be a certain way to maybe just pick up some speed, or just maybe change something you're going to do on the lap in the race, maybe to pick up some more speed, potentially. Number 5 is going to be choosing your PR agent, or just choosing your agent in general, maybe for, you know, because obviously your PR agent's the same agent really for negotiations, but maybe if they're different, that'd be kind of cool as well. But choosing your agent, a lot like almost Motorsport Manager, where you kind of choose your staff, I guess you could say, but this way it's a bit more actual personal to the driver. You know, the driver would kind of pick his agent. You know, obviously, if you have a bad agent in real life, you wouldn't want to stick with them, so you might want to fire them and go to a different agent. And so in that way, you can add a whole different level of the game in that kind of area, of you can have these different agents that you can pick with different perks, maybe, and that could affect your contract negotiations. So along with you doing what you do on track, your reputation with the team, your agent could affect what kind of contract you can negotiate with different teams. Maybe there might be a certain agent that has more affiliation with the Italian teams because he or she is Italian, or he or she worked in Italy or something like that. I just think off my top of the head, a lot of different kind of ways and unique ways you could do that, because in real life, I'm sure there's a lot of politics that goes on behind the scenes. It's F1. There's undoubtedly so much politics that goes on behind the scenes with these deals, and it's really a lot of the time in F1, I get the sense of who you know rather than sometimes, you know, how good you are. Sometimes it's more about who you know, what kind of money do you have, what kind of backing do you have, what your network's like, and so that could be played into with the game of choosing your PR agent, choosing wisely who you want, and at certain points in your career, you might have to make the tough decision of firing your agent and going with a new one, and there could be, just like in Motorsport Manager, a loyalty built up with your agent, and so the loyalty can help you negotiate deals, but then if you want to fire that agent, you get rid of that loyalty, but you're going to trade that off maybe for a different perk. So let's say I've got an agent who I've been really loyal to for 3 seasons now. I'm in Red Bull right now, but I fancy going to Ferrari, but he's not going to be any good to get me a good deal. Agents come along there. They're from Italy. They've got affiliation with Ferrari. They've worked with Ferrari before. So I'm going to sack off the loyalty here, fire him. I'm going to lose out maybe on getting a better contract with Ferrari than the one I have with Red Bull, but I will actually get a contract with Ferrari because I've gone with this other agent that's going to be better at talking me through the deal to get the deal done with the team. So, yeah, bit of a crazy idea out there, actually, kind of rolling with that kind of initial idea of just choosing your agent, basically. I think the person who commented this below just kind of meant in a sense of having a different character, basically, but I think you could really delve into it and make it a real mini-game almost as part of the negotiation process. And again, it just goes back to the point number 1, just making that entire system a lot more complex and a bit more kind of immersive, really, rather than, oh, it's one screen, I just do negotiations 3 times, that's it, we move on, 4 races later, I do the same thing, basically. Number 6 is, rather than a new addition, more of a tweak, really, to the game, but I think it's clear from also the esports scene, and also myself as well, and other content creators potentially, is a change to the ERS system, especially in this year's game. I think the ERS is a little bit too crazy. Last year, I think ERS was pretty decent. It was in a good place, the 5 modes worked well. This year, though, because of the new cars and the new physics and the way the drag affects the cars and the way the slipstream and the fuel affects the cars, the ERS sometimes is way too fiddly. You see that a lot in esports, but you also see it a lot in career mode as well in certain scenarios where it's sometimes easier to sit back behind a car in non-ERS, save ERS, and then try and go for a move later, or not even make the move, basically, because you basically just can't because your engine overheats then and you can't make the move. And then also in terms of the overtake mode and the hot lap mode, the AI sometimes are so overpowered with it when the player just can't keep up with managing the ERS as quickly as the AI, and so you have some instances where they're so overpowered on straights and certain tracks. I just think for some reason this year's game, it just went a bit too overboard. Last year, I think it was a good balance, I think. Potentially it could be, you know, maybe misspeaking. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below of it, but I think for me personally, and also a lot of the esports community, definitely when you look at the esports races, have that issue, but I think it also is a kind of, career mode kind of issue as well versus the AIs. I think this year with the physics, the way the drag works, the ERS is just a bit too, like, extreme in both cases. For non-ERS, those, like, lower modes and the high modes, you're just having to constantly switch it every single corner, every single sector, and F1 drivers just don't do that. Like, they don't. ERS is mapped to the car electronically. They choose the mapping before the race, and then in the race itself, all the drivers can do is override it with an overtake button, or potentially, you know, with a few switches, maybe go to a lower setting to try and save ERS for later in the race. I mean, we've heard them sometimes go to different modes, but they're not going to different modes every single sector. They're going to different modes every different stint, like every 5-6 laps, not every lap or every sector. So I think there needs to be a bit of a revision, maybe a bit of a look into maybe how we can make this better going into 2020. Because it's been the same system now for 3 years. I think we had this in 2017, did we not? No, I don't think we did, actually. 2018 we had it, 2019. I think now 2 years on, maybe time to look at a different tweak and change to it for 2020. And finally, number 7 is going to be making the R&D tree a little bit larger, actually, making it a bit more complex, because right now at the moment, or just changing the rates at which R&D is done again, because we've been talking about the rate of R&D quite a lot now for 3 games now. It's not really got to the perfect level. I think they've got quite a good balance right now, in a way, after they did the patch when it was a little bit too quick sometimes for the AI at the very start of the game. But I think now you can max out the car in about 2 seasons-ish, or maybe just about 3, give or take. I think it should take at least 3 to 4 seasons, and especially when there's not an R&D reset, sometimes it's just really bad to see like 2-3 teams all plateauing at max cars, and it becomes a very boring season in career mode then. So I think there needs to be a look into maybe making the tree somehow longer. Maybe if you max out the tree and there's no R&D reset for a season, potentially the game looks at that and goes, okay, so there might be a bit more to add onto the tree then, it kind of like in the dark, basically. It's in the game files, it just comes up potentially. And then another point to this, of making R&D a bit more complex, or just the way that its system works, is I think they need to bring back the system we had in 2016. I think it was 2016. I think they removed it for 2017, I'm pretty sure, was you could save ERS, and you could physically click, I want to save ERS, and you could get rewarded with bonus R&D points. Because right now, if you, as a player, just intentionally potentially actively say, I want to save R&D for next season, you don't really get rewarded for that too much. You get, obviously, bonuses with your R&D contract. You get the bonus of saving up R&D, and then, obviously, you can upgrade at Abu Dhabi, and that takes literally one race to all get done for Australia. But there's no bonus for taking the pain of not upgrading. Whereas in 2016, there was a bonus of you can get more R&D points here by saying, I want to save this for next year. Right now, you just take that pain on the chin, and then you hope that the massive leap you make from Abu Dhabi to Australia is enough to kind of warrant the pain you just took. But let's say you start saving R&D halfway through the season, which some teams do, you know, a la Racing Point, you know, some of the midfield teams that run on really tight budgets, and some of the lower teams definitely do start, you know, maybe think about next year's car as early as, you know, Spain or Canada of the season they're in, basically, from the next one, from the previous one they're going into. So I think if you try and take the pain there, you should definitely get a reward of having bonus R&D points at the end of the year, potentially, for you to spend. It was a good system. It was a good feature in 2016, which I don't really get why they really removed. Maybe because, obviously, you get R&D bonus points now for your contract, but I think it would be a better thing to have that in as well, on top of that, basically, to reward the player if you did that. So that has been another 7 things we all want to see in F1 2020 career. And as always, guys, let me know in the comments below what you thought of those ideas, and any more new ideas you can think of. Pop them in the comments below. Thumbs up other ones that you see and you agree with, basically, because obviously the ones that get most thumbs up will be at the top of the comments, so it's easier for me to then see them for the next time, potentially. And obviously, if there are enough ideas for next time, there will be a next time, maybe. But guys, if you did enjoy this one, you did agree with some of those ideas and did enjoy the idea of some of those, then be sure to hit that like button. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. Like I said, if you are new around here, subscribe for weekly full-on content. I've been aarava. I'm just Dale. See you guys next time. Goodbye.